Hello and welcome to Middle East Matters on France 24. I'm Rochelle Ferguson-Biahi. Coming up on the programme, a surprise election win in Iraq marks the most significant victory of Shiite leader Moqtada al-Sadr's political career. His challenge now is to form a new government. And for the first time in 3 years, residents in the Syrian city of Raqqa observed the holy month of Ramadan without fear of the Islamic State group. Plus, as Egypt's Mo Salah is named as a possible contender for this year's Ballon d'Or, enthusiasm in his native country is at an all-time high. We begin in Iraq, where the coalition of the influential Shia cleric Moqtada al-Sadr has gained more seats than any other party or alliance in the country's parliamentary polls. Well, the election marks the most important victory of Sadr's political career. His next major challenge is forming a new government. Negotiations are expected to take weeks.
A victory for Moqtada al-Sadr. According to official results, his alliance with the Iraqi Communist Party won him 54 seats in the National Assembly, falling behind with 47 seats the Fatih bloc, a party mainly composed by militias that were key in the defeat against the Islamic State group. The party of the outgoing prime minister won 42 seats. Haider al-Abadi acknowledged his defeat and called to form a coalition government.
We worked at the meeting today with Moqtada al-Sadr and with all the other political blocs to accelerate the formation of the government. This must be a strong government capable of leading the country for the next 4 years, to provide services to citizens and to ensure the security and economic prosperity.
For Moqtada al-Sadr, the hardest part will begin after the elections, marked by a record-low turnout. The next assembly will be the most diverse one, following the first multi-party elections of 2005.
There was a clear message during this meeting to reassure the Iraqi people. Your government will be for all. It will be inclusive for all without excluding anyone. It will work for reconciliation and prosperity towards an inclusive government that will include and will sponsor all people.
The cleric is a leading voice in the fight against corruption in Iraq. His bloc's victory has given al-Sadr a strong say in negotiations with the different parties. In 90 days, the parliament will appoint a new prime minister. It will not be Moqtada al-Sadr, who did not run in the election. For this scholar, the next government should mark the end of an era.
I think that Iraq is at a turning point with the elections of 2018. Either Iraq regained its sovereignty and rule of law to return to the fold of Arab nations, or we continue to do as it was in recent years, remaining under the influence of Iran, Turkey, or the United States.
Whoever is elected prime minister will face the challenge of rebuilding a country destroyed, only 5 months after the defeat of the Islamic State group.
Still in Iraq, the Islamic State group has been run out of Fallujah, a city which it ruled with an iron hand for 2.5 years. Now, the scene of some of the fiercest battles in the country, fighting in Fallujah took its toll particularly on Iraqi children. Well, today, with the help of NGOs, some are now heading back to school and trying to rebuild their lives. Wasim Khanit reports.
We're in a refugee camp in Fallujah, but for all the world, these boys and girls look like any other children, playing carefree and going to class. And yet,
Who here has seen someone beheaded by a member of the Islamic State group?
15 girls out of 30, first-hand witnesses to the brutality of the Islamic State group. These children arrived at the camp 2 years ago with their mothers. The Islamic State group may have been defeated, but they have stayed because their homes have been destroyed. NGOs in the camp now work with them to help overcome the trauma.
Yes, I saw people being killed. One day in front of me, by a barrier, they cut off a man's head with a sword. They stuck the head on the end of the sword and walked around the square like that. I see these memories all the time. They're always in my head, and I can't get rid of them.
They came to our house and took my uncle. I saw them drag him away. He was in the military and we haven't seen him in a year and a half.
Did they take your father too?
No, not my father.
They wore us out and starved us. They raised the price of flour on purpose so we couldn't afford it. They forbade us from going to school. They took everything from us.
UNICEF says 3 million children have had no access to education since 2014, and millions more were forced to go to Islamic State group schools. Now they're being given catch-up classes by NGOs, and history, music, art, and science are back on the curriculum. But what's harder to correct is the violence and hate that still fills their minds.
How could I forgive them? They beheaded my father.
I hate them. They killed my father. They took my uncle. They took our homes. How could I forget? I hate them. When I'm older, I'll go and shoot my father's assassins.
There's just one psychologist for the 7,000 children here. Camps like these in the outlying suburbs don't figure highly on the Iraqi government's list of priorities. And some of the families here are also suspected of having supported the Islamic State group. And yet, for the first time since 2014, these children are allowed to sing again. A symbol of hope for a generation on whom Iraq's future now rests.
We take you next to the Syrian city of Raqqa, a former stronghold of the Islamic State group. For the first time in 3 years, residents are marking the holy month of Ramadan free from the watchful eye of extremists. While the Islamic State group controlled the city, anyone deemed not to be observing the holy month properly faced lashes or even death.
At first glance, this scene appears ordinary. Residents of Raqqa, Syria, shop at an open-air market to prepare for the iftar, the evening meal that breaks the Ramadan fast. But for the first time in over 3 years, inhabitants of the former capital of the Islamic State group have the choice to observe a relaxed Ramadan or even to abstain from fasting altogether.
The people are very happy now, compared to the harsh years we went through under the Islamic State group. And that's in spite of the destruction and the chaos in the country. It's like they woke up from a nightmare.
We're buying some pastries to make the kids happy, make them feel the Ramadan spirit.
Under Islamic State group rule, those who the extremist group deemed too unobservant of the religious practice risked heavy-handed visits from the religious police, lashes, or even death. In 2016, members of the Islamic State group reportedly locked in iron cages, lashed, and later crucified 3 people they accused of breaking their fast. This year, those who have chosen not to fast can eat and drink publicly during the day without fear of brutal punishment. Despite the newfound freedom, one obstacle to a more carefree Ramadan lingers for some residents: the price of food and other basic goods.
The prices are obscenely expensive and there's no work. My sons, my kids are out in the streets to bring home 1,500 Syrian pounds, $3 to live by.
Raqqa was freed from the grips of the Islamic State group in October of 2017. But its liberation came at a hefty cost. Entire neighborhoods were razed during the offensive against the extremist group and have yet to be rebuilt. Many of the city's districts still do not have electricity or running water, and employment opportunities remain scarce.
And finally, we take a look at one of football's rising stars, the Egyptian international Mohamed Salah. After netting an incredible 43 goals this season with Liverpool, Salah's being hailed as the man who could scoop the 2018 Ballon d'Or. Well, in this next report, our correspondent heads to Salah's hometown in the Nile Delta, where he's considered a legend.
In a busy cafe in downtown Cairo, all eyes are focused on a small TV screen. Tonight, it's Egypt's biggest icon playing. 25-year-old Mohamed Salah has risen to become one of the best football players in the world in one season and a source of national pride.
He's the king of Egypt today and the most important player we have. We're proud to follow him.
It's a must.
The story of Mohamed Salah begins here in this small village in the Nile Delta just north of the capital. Born to a peasant family, he began his career playing in the dusty streets before being spotted and eventually rising to the highest summit of European football. With his rise to stardom, he's also become a benefactor for his family and hometown, funding a sports field and a school, and creating a charity for poor children and families in the village. His philanthropy putting him on the front page of a local comic strip magazine.
We put Mo Salah on the cover because every month there's a soap opera about him and his exploits called The Village of Good People.
Mohamed Salah's success is the stuff of dreams, but it's also a marketing opportunity. Ahmed is Mohamed Salah's barber whenever he comes home for a visit. He now offers his customers a special cut.
Many people ask me for the Salah cut. His style, his hair, his beard, to be like him. Mohamed has always been ambitious. He always had a goal in mind and he finally reached it. He's a model for all of us.
Mohamed Salah madness has gripped the entire country. In Cairo's busy markets, his face is everywhere. On scarves, prayer mats, Ramadan lamps, pennants and t-shirts. Everything goes with the image of the man who this year helped propel Egypt to the World Cup finals for the first time in 28 years. It seems everyone markets in the image of the footballing star, including the government.
The authorities are trying to use the celebrity of Mohamed Salah and his reputation to improve the image of the country abroad. It allows them to distract from economic and social problems.
Mohamed Salah and his magic feet, an antidote to the economic and social crises that Egypt is going through today. The Egyptian authorities want to believe that, and the people do too.
Well, that's it for this edition of Middle East Matters. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can always visit our Facebook page, Middle East Matters at France 24. From all of us on the team, thank you. See you next week.